Real story. The school mask mandate is an emotional one in our state. We're talking about our kids, and wherever you or anyone falls in the argument, there's likely a lot of strong emotion behind it. The governor is recommending the school mask mandate end on February 28th, per his executive order, which the legislature blessed last week. After that, local districts will decide whether to extend that mandate in their own communities or not. Now, the Department of Public Health does retain the authority until the end of June to reinstate a statewide mask mandate if circumstances require it. So last week, we heard from one state senator, also a doctor, on why he believes that mask mandate should stay in place until at least the end of the month. This morning, we're going to get a different perspective from State Senator Tony Hwang, a Republican from Fairfield. He has a unique experience that shaped his view, specifically his opposition to mask mandates in schools right now. Good morning, Senator. Wonderful to have you on, as always.
It's great to be on with you, Jen. And I am so encouraged that we have moved forward on this emotional matter of school mandated masks, partially restoring local and parental control, although it's still under the permission, as you said, of the Commissioner of Public Health and Education. But I have to tell you, I've talked to parents and saw genuinely how excited children are about having a sense of mass choice. It should have never been such a political and polarizing issue.
All right, so tell me, what your view is exactly. Were you always against the masking of schools? Was it you wanted them to have choices? Explain your position.
Well, COVID's still a public health pandemic. And although it is a significantly different virus than it was 2 years ago, where now we know more about it and the remarkable medical science of vaccines and boosters that we have to protect people. And as the co-chair of the Bipartisan Bioscience Caucus, I believe in vaccines and I believe in boosters, and I encourage everyone to get it for themselves and loved ones. But the danger has eased. And for me, our justification in government and until recently, the continual extension of emergency powers for the governor, and even as we voted on it just the last week, we are justifying still an emergency power status. And when I hear so much about the use of fear and danger to justify these kind of emergency powers, it evokes similarities to my personal experience of a authoritarian government that used fear and constant fear and danger to justify emergency control and therefore curtailing personal rights and liberties. It was really a powerful but yet subtle indoctrination that really influence people and abridge people's differences of opinion. And what you saw in this school mask, was that the means did not justify the end, and that there should have been progress and reevaluation, but people were never given a chance to do that. Remember, Jen, when this was first just beginning and parents saw the social emotional dynamics of their children, the unmasked movement was derided as fringe, unscientific, and really just a element that was not in touch. But it's remarkable now that we've justified it, that a majority of our school districts have said, look, we're going to give choice back. We're still going to manage this and be cautious. But what I have seen this is the supposed solution of the school mandate has been far more damaging to the social emotional health of children and parents than possibly the virus itself for the past 2 years.
All right, so I have 2 points that I want you to talk about. But first, can you just tell our viewers right now what your background is? I mean, your parents, from what I was reading in your bio, escaped communist China and ended up going to Taiwan, were you born in Taiwan?
I was. My parents escaped the communists, immigrated to Taiwan, which was supposedly a representative parliamentary government. But because of the utilization of fear and danger of potential threats of attack, we were living under where personal rights and freedom of the press and an ability to be able to speak out and have elections and representative government did not exist. And it did not exist for over nearly 40 years of utilizing this. So we had a whole society, a generation of individuals that grew up under martial control, authoritarian rule, under the guise of fear and danger. And it was an indoctrination. When I say that, it's subtle. It's what you're told. It's what you hear. It's what you're supposed to do. And you know, when I came to the United States and understood representative government, elections, freedom of the press, that people have differences of opinion, that we have an opportunity to voice it, that's freedom. We never had that choice under a supposed parliamentary democracy that was under the guise of emergency rule.
So you're saying kind of the mask mandate, the requirement triggered you in some way to think about that. Okay, what about the argument that it's a public health crisis, and you're on the public health committee, so you understand this too, that it impacts an entire group of people. So for example, you might want to give your kid the choice to not wear a mask, right? But that impacts the child next to them that might come home to an immunocompromised adult.
Absolutely. And I think the first thing is any child that is autoimmune and is at high risk, they wouldn't be going to school. I think the other aspect of it is an equally frustrating issue is, in what upside down world that we live in do we place the burden on emotionally vulnerable children to protect our adults? That was another factor where we have imposed this when nowhere else in our society we have done so. The governor never instituted a mask mandate. He delegated it to our local municipalities to give them the control of what they know best uniquely to their community. It is only when it affects children in K-12 schools, public and private, as well as our nursing homes, that we have imposed that mandate on our children. And what we have seen, the social emotional challenge and possible damage, Jen, is obvious. I mean, when you see the plethora of youth mental health bills that we're now proposing, it is a reality that our children have been significantly impacted. And when you hear stories of individuals, we had one individual, a father, Jim Cusco, who has been inspirational. He said, COVID did not kill my child. His son, 16 years old, suffered from depression, and because of remote and all the unusual circumstances that they had to go through in school, he committed suicide. And what he had said was quite clearly, COVID did not kill my child, but the whole gamut of restrictions and alteration of his normal life has obviously a devastating impact. Another one that really touched me.
Senator, hold on. We only have like 3 minutes left, so I want to get you to talk about two other points. But I know some people would sit there and say too that the reason that the mask mandate was imposed in our schools is because our kids were the ones that couldn't get vaccinated, right? We still have kids 5 and under, and that the mask was the way to prevent and keep kids in school. So what's your response to that?
I believe in the science, and we are developing vaccines for our younger population, and I encourage that when it is medically proven and adapted for use, that they absolutely, I believe in the vaccine. But that being said, we look at a population that is has higher kind of tolerances, less physically vulnerable from a standpoint of our seniors and those with comorbidities. But I think ultimately, as I said before, when is it more damaging to the social emotional health of our children than possibly the virus itself? It has to be a balancing act. And the inconsistency in that policy and the demonstrated damage this has had on our children is incalculable. And I think we are balancing it. And the excitement that I saw in having people get their choice and local input back is powerful. And if you've seen the children that I have been able to interact with, when they know that March 1st is a day in which they will be able to move forward in a new normal, is something that you cannot ever ever replicate. I mean, it is what we impact our children. And again, as adults, we have an important responsibility to be sure that we protect them more than it is to protect some of our adults.
Senator, two things. First of all, do you know what Fairfield's going to do?
Fairfield, without a doubt, approved to be mask optional. Newtown did so as well. Many of our communities have done so. Again, it is up to local control. Isn't that the essence of democracy? When we have mandates from government on down and one size fits all, that's when I have the challenge. And that's why I think the authoritarian concept plays into people's frustration is local input, local decision making. It really is the most effective way that we can combat any challenge that we have moving forward.
Senator Tony Hwang, so good to see you on The Real Story. We appreciate you coming on the program. I think you were on with Senator Heather Summers, like 6 months ago at this point, talking about the development of vaccines. And so we're kind of on the other end of this and appreciate your input.
Thank you very much for the opportunity.
Senator Hwang. All right, that does it for us on The Real